Okay, quiz tomorrow is just on 1.5, but remember 1.5 has 3 sections, so it's 3 parts. I'm going to do the odd questions with you, and then when we have time at the end, you guys can work on the evens, and I'll post the answers by the end of the day. So let's look at number 1. When we're subtracting, what should we do first? Distribute the negative. So it turns into a minus 12i and minus 18. Then from here, we're going to combine our like terms. So I'm going to start with the real parts, because our real part, bless you, has to come first. What's 7 minus 18? Negative 11. And then our imaginary parts. What is 19i minus 12i? So negative 11 plus 7i would be our answer. Let's look at number 3. For 3, what should we do first? Distribute. So I'm going to distribute the negative 4 into the parentheses behind it and distribute the 2. So this turns into negative 24 plus 28i plus 10 plus 2i. What would we do next? Combine like terms. Let's start with the real parts first. So negative 24 plus 10. Negative 14. And 28i plus 2i. 30i. Remember, the real part always comes first. What should we do for number 5? FOIL. Perfect. We are multiplying here, so we want to FOIL them out. So start with our first. Negative 3 times 8. Negative 24. The outer, negative 3 times negative 5i. So plus 15i. The inner, 7i times 8. 56i. And then the last, 7i times negative 5i. Negative 35i squared. What should we do next? We can combine like terms. What else should we do? Change I squared to be what? Negative 1. What's negative 35 times negative 1? Positive 35. So it changes it to be a positive 35. So we have 35 minus 24. So that would be 11. And then combine our imaginary parts, 15i plus 56i. 71i. So for number 2, what should I do first? Distribute the 4i. So this turns into 88i squared minus 32i. I'm just going to rewrite the first part. We are adding it all together. What should I do next? Anytime we see an I squared, we want to stop what we're doing and change it to a negative 1. Bless you. So that makes it a negative 88. What would we do next? Combine like terms. I always want to start with my real numbers by combining the real numbers, because your real part's going to go first. What's negative 8 minus 88? Negative 96. And then what's negative 13i minus 32i? Negative 45i. So that would be our answer. Remember, the real part always comes first. Let's look at 4. What should we do first for number 4? Distribute. I'm going to distribute the negative 7, and I'm also going to distribute the negative 3. So we have negative 35 minus 21i minus 30 plus 9i. What should we do next? Combine like terms. So let's start by combining our real parts together. What's negative 35 minus 30? Negative 65. And then our imaginary parts together. What's negative 21i plus 9i? Negative 12i. What should we do first for number 6? FOIL. We are multiplying here, so you want to FOIL. So we start by multiplying the first. What's negative 4 times negative 9? Then negative 4 times negative 7i plus 28i. What is 5i times negative 9? Negative 45i. And 5i times negative 7i? Negative 35i squared. Be super, super careful with your signs when multiplying. What would I do next? The I squared changes to a negative 1. So negative 35 times negative 1 would be plus positive 35. Lastly, we combine our like terms. So let's start with the real part. 36 plus 35. 71. Then the imaginary parts. 28i minus 45i. Negative 17i. For 7, we're dividing. What do we do when we're dividing our imaginary? We do the conjugate of the denominator. We multiply by the conjugate of the denominator. So what's our conjugate? 7 plus 2i. So I'm multiplying by 7 plus 2i on the top and the bottom. Let's multiply out the top first. How do I multiply the tops together? FOIL. So we get 35 plus 10i plus 63i plus 18i squared. What would we do next? Change the I squared to be negative 1, and negative 1 times 18 would be negative 18. What's next? Combine like terms. What's 35 minus 18? 17. And 10i plus 63i? 73i. Now on the bottom, we can FOIL or we could do our conjugate shortcut. Remember, our conjugate shortcut is a squared minus b squared. So this would be 7 squared minus 2i squared. So 49 minus, what's 2i squared? 4i squared. And what does I squared turn into? Negative 1, so it turns into a plus 4. And 49 plus 4? 53. Can I simplify my fraction here? Always check to see if you can simplify. All 3 whole numbers have to be divisible by the same thing if you're going to simplify. Here we don't have anything that goes into 17, 73, or 53. The same GCF. So we can't simplify anymore. So you can leave it like this, or you can split it up. So if you split it up, it's 17 over 53 plus 73i over 53. And then from here, you just have to make sure each fraction can't be simplified more. If you can simplify one of your fractions, then simplify it. But it's fine if you leave it all as one. Let's, just as an example, let's say we had 3i over 2i plus 5. What would we do here? What's our conjugate of 2i plus 5? 2i minus 5. So even though the i's first, our conjugate, just the sign in the middle changes. When you FOIL it out, or if you do your conjugate shortcut on the bottom, the i's are going to end up canceling, so you'll end up with a whole number. You don't have to rearrange it. You can just keep it in the same order. Just change the sign in the middle. We'll multiply this one out. So what should I do on the top? I don't have to FOIL. We're going to distribute. So this becomes 6i squared minus 15i. Let's simplify it a little bit more. The I squared turns into negative 1, which makes it a negative 6 minus 15i. Perfect. Now we can do our conjugate shortcut on the bottom. So our conjugate shortcut is a squared minus b squared. So our a is 2i squared minus 5 squared. What's 2i squared? Negative. What's 2i squared? 4i squared. And I squared turns into negative 1. So it changes it to negative 4 minus, what's 5 squared? 25. And negative 4 minus 25? Negative 29. Chloe. It's just the 5 that's being squared, so the minus stays in the middle. We can simplify this a little bit. You don't really have to, but since all 3 of our terms are negative, we can divide them all by negative 1 to make it positive. So 6 plus 15i over 29. Either way is fine though. All right, for number 9. Can I combine these all together? Not yet. What do I have to do in order to figure out if I can combine them? Simplify each radical. So let's start with square root negative 75. First thing I want to do is take out the negative and make it an I. Now let's simplify the square root of 75. What are 2 factors of 75? 15 and 5. And 2 factors of 15? 5 and 3. So I circle my group of 5. So what's going to come to the outside? 5. Remember, that gets multiplied by what's already on the outside. A lot of people forget that we already have a coefficient outside. What's negative 4i times 5? Negative 20i. And what stays on the inside? 3. So our first part simplified to negative 20i square root 3. Let's move on to the second part. I'm going to take out the negative and turn it into an I. What are 2 factors of 20? 10 and 2. And 2 factors of 10? 5 and 2. So I circle my group of 2's. What comes to the outside? 2. So we multiply that times what's already on the outside. So 6i times 2 would be 12i. And what stays on the inside? 5. Next part. I'm going to take out the negative and turn it into an I. What are 2 factors of 48? 6 and 8, that works. Or you could say 12 and 4. 6 and 8. 2 factors of 6. 3 and 2. And 2 factors of 8. 2 factors of 4. 2 and 2. So here we circled 2 groups of 2. So what's going to come to the outside? 4. So this would be minus 4i square root. What has to stay on the inside? 3. All right, let's do the third one. We're going to take out the negative, turn it into an I. What are 2 factors of 80? 8 and 10. 2 factors of 8? 4 and 2. 2 factors of 10. 2 and 5. So this breaks down to 2, 2, 2, 2, and 5. What would we circle? 2 sets of 2's. And what comes to the outside? So 4i square root 5. All right, now that we simplified all 4 of them, let's see which ones we can combine. Do we have any like terms here? Which 2 are like terms?
Square root 3's.
The square root 3's. So they have to have the I in it, and they have to have the same radical. So we can combine the 2 square root 3's. So what's negative 20i square root 3 minus 4i square root 3? Negative 24i square root 3. And then we can also combine the ones with square root 5 together. So what is 12i square root 5 plus 4i square root 5? 16i square root 5. Now these are both imaginary numbers, so it doesn't matter which order we put them in. But if you had a real part to this, you'd want to put the real part first and your imaginary part second. All right, number 10. So here we want to solve, write your answer in simplest form. If you can solve by factoring, solve by factoring. If not, we have to use the quadratic formula. So what would I need to do first here? Subtract 3x. And make sure you put it in standard form when you subtract the 3x over. Remember, when solving, we want it to be equal to 0 if we're going to try to factor. So we have 4x squared minus 3x plus 6 equals 0. Let's try to factor, see if it works. Multiply the first times the last, we get 24. Do we have two factors of 24 that add to negative 3? No. All right, so if we can't factor, what do we have to do? Quadratic formula. So we have A, B, and C. Let's plug it in. So our quadratic formula is negative B. I'll write it up here so we have it. Negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC over 2A. So let's plug in. We have negative 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times 6 over 2 times 4. Be super, super careful when plugging in and when multiplying, especially simplifying under the radical. A lot of people messed up on the last test the signs of multiplying these three together. So a lot of people got questions wrong because they forgot a sign. So just be careful. So negative 3 turns into a positive 3. Plus or minus. This would be 9 minus 4 times 6. Awesome. So 9 minus 96 would be negative 87. Perfect. Over 8. What should I do next? Simplify the radical. Let's start by taking out an I and seeing if we can, bless you, break it down any more. Anything go into 87? 3 goes into it. What's 8 plus 7? 15. 15 is a factor of 3. So we know that 3 goes into it. How many times? 29. Do we have any factors of 29? No. So we can't break down 87. So we have 3 plus or minus I square root 87 over 8. And we can leave our answer like this. Just don't forget to take the I out. If you forget to take the I out, it's not simplified enough. Just take the I out if you can. So let's look at number 8. So when we're dividing, what should I do?
I have no idea.
Multiply by the conjugate of the denominator. What's our conjugate of the denominator? 7 plus 4i. So the numbers stay the same. It's just the sign in the middle that changes. So if I multiply it to the bottom, I have to multiply the same exact thing to the top too. So 7 plus 4i gets multiplied to the top and the bottom. So on top, how would I multiply these two together? FOIL. So we have 6 times 7, which is 42. 6 times 4i, 24i. I times 7, and I times 4i. 4i squared. What would I do next? Change the I squared and make it negative 4. So then we combine our like terms. Let's combine our real parts first. 42 minus 4 is 38. And 24i plus 7i? 31i. Perfect. That's our numerator. Now for our denominator, we can do our conjugate shortcut, which is a squared minus b squared. So our a is going to be the first number, and our b is the second number. So 7 squared minus 4i squared. What's 7 squared?
49.
What is 4i squared?
4i squared. 4.
16i squared. So you have to square the 4 and square the I. What does I squared turn into? It makes it a positive 16. It changes to negative 1. Negative 16 times negative 1 would be positive 16.
I can just foil it, right?
You can FOIL it. Yeah, you'll get the same answer. What's 49 plus 16? $65. 49 plus 16. Can we simplify this? No, we don't have a common factor that goes into both 38, 31, and 65. Remember, all three numbers have to be divisible by the same thing. All right, just for fun, let's say I had something like 3i over 5i plus 4. What would I do here? I multiply by the conjugate of the denominator, which would be 5i minus 4. So even though, it's 5i minus 4. There we go. Even though our I comes first in the denominator, we keep it the same when we make the conjugate. It'll still go away when we FOIL out the denominator. Do you want to work this one out?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. All right, Ryan, what do we get on the top? Do the magic. So we change the I squared to be a negative. So this would be negative 15 minus 12i. On the bottom, we can use our conjugate shortcut. So a squared minus b squared. So we have... Doesn't matter. Yeah, because when we FOIL it out or use our conjugate shortcut, it ends up going away. So we have 5i squared minus 4 squared. 5i squared would be what? 25i squared. And what does I squared change to? Negative 1, so it makes it a negative 25 minus, it's just the 4 that's being squared, so that would be minus 16. Negative 25 minus 16, negative 41. Now we can simplify this one a little bit just because all three signs are negative, so we can make them all positive. So it'd be 15 plus 12i over positive 41. So I divided all three of my terms here by negative 1, just to flip the signs. Because what's a negative divided by a negative? Positive. All right, let's look at 9. So can I combine all 4 of these together? No. But let's see if we can simplify and make them combinable. So first thing I want to do, looking at my first term, I want to take out the negative and change it to an I. And then let's simplify our radical. What are 2 factors of 75? 25 and 3. 2 factors of 25? 5 and 5. So what would come to the outside? 5. But what did I already have on the outside? So negative 4i times 5 would be negative 20i. Do not forget to multiply by what's already outside. What has to stay on the inside? 3. Let's do the next one. I'm going to start by taking out the negative and changing it to an I. What are 2 factors of 20?
5 and 4.
5 and 4. 5 would just be 5, and 2 factors of 4? 2 and 2. So we circle the 2's. What comes to the outside? 2. So what's 6i times 2? 12i. What stays on the inside? 5. All right, so our third one, what's the first thing I should do, Tabit?
Take out the negative.
Take out the negative, turn it into an I. What are 2 factors of 48?
8 and 6.
8 and 6. 2 factors of 8. And 2 factors of 6. And then 4 breaks down into 2 and 2. So what gets circled here? 2 pairs of 2s. So what comes to the outside? 4. So we have minus, because it's a negative. Minus 4i square root. What stays on the inside? 3. All right, last one. What should we do for negative 80? Take the negative out, turn it into an I. What are 2 factors of 80? 10 and 8, and 2 factors of 10, and 2 factors of 8. So what would we circle? 2 groups of 2. So we have plus 4i, what stays on the inside? 5. All right, now let's see if we have any like terms that we can combine together. Any like terms?
Yeah.
What?
I know there's 2 of them. Negative 20, negative 40.
Negative 20i square root 3 and negative 4i square root 3. They're like terms because they both have an I and they have the same radical. So we can add them together by adding the coefficients. So we get negative 24i square root 3. And then the other 2 are also like terms. What's 12i square root 5 plus 4i square root 5? 16i square root 5. Does the order that I write them in matter here? No, they're both imaginary, so it doesn't matter which one comes first, but if you had a real part, make sure the real part comes first. What should we do first for number 11? I'm going to add 3, and what else? Subtract x. When we write this, make sure you keep it in standard form. So we have 7x squared minus x plus 3. What's our a? B? And c? Perfect. It doesn't factor, so we have to use the quadratic formula. So we're using negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So let's plug it in. We have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared minus 4 times 7 times 3 over 2 times 7. Negative 1 turns into a positive 1. Negative 1 squared would be 1. Minus 4 times 7 times 3 would be what? 84. 1 minus 84 is? Negative 83 over 14. What should I do next? Take out the I, and let's see if we can simplify our radical anymore. So let's try. Do we have any factors of 83? None? Then we're as simplified as we can go once we take the I out. So do not forget to take the I out. That would be our answer. Bless you. Okay, the last one I want to do is number 12. We could use quadratic here, but how else can we solve? Subtract 49, move it to the other side. So since we don't have that b term here, and we only have just a single x squared, we can solve by isolating our variables. So we have x squared is equal to negative 49. What do we do next? Square root both sides to get rid of the squared. That cancels. So x is equal to, what do I have to remember to do when I take the square root of both sides? Plus or minus the square root of negative 49. And what's the square root of negative 49? 7i. Don't forget the I. So x is equal to plus or minus 7i. right, let's take a look at 13. Couple different ways we can solve this. We can use the quadratic formula, or if we see that we just have an x squared, we don't have to use the quadratic. How else could we solve? Easier than that. We can divide by 5. Is that what you said? Sorry, I didn't hear. So x squared plus 9 is equal to 0. Now we want to subtract 9. We want to get that x squared all by itself. So x squared is equal to negative 9. Then what? Take the square root. So what does x equal? Plus or minus what?
The square root of that.
What's the square root of negative 9? 3i. Perfect. You could use quadratic formula if you wanted to here, but you don't have to. So if you just have an x squared with no b, it might be easier just to solve. So you could make this your a. You don't have a b, so your b would be 0, and this would be your c. Or you could take out the GCF first like we did, and we had x squared plus 9 equals 0. So your a would be 1, your b is still 0, and c would be 9. Which I would always take out the GCF if you have one first to make the plugging into the quadratic formula easier. All right, lastly, let's look at 15. What should I do first? What's my GCF? We can say negative 6, that works. So I have x squared minus 6x plus 2 equals 0. So when you take out a GCF, if your GCF is just a number, it goes away. What would I do next? Quadratic formula. What's our A? What's B? And C? So let's plug it in. Samuel, when we plug it in, what do we get? B squared. Perfect. Let's simplify. This turns into a positive 6 plus or minus. This would be 36 minus 8. What's 36 minus 8? 28. So the square root of 28 over 2. What would I do next? Simplify. Let's simplify our square root of 28. What are 2 factors of 28? 7 and 4. 2 factors of 4. So what gets circled? So 2 comes to the outside. What stays on the inside? Perfect. So we have 6 plus or minus 2 square root 7 over 2. Can we simplify this anymore?
Yeah.
All 3 of our whole numbers are divisible by what? 2. So I'm going to divide them all by 2. So we get 3 plus or minus square root 7 over 1, which we don't need the over 1 part. So this would be our answer. Notice how I simplified once I got 3 whole numbers that you can divide into. You cannot divide a whole number into a radical. People are still simplifying that way. You cannot do that. Can't divide into the radical with a whole number. You can only simplify if all 3 whole numbers are divisible by the same thing.